Executive Committee meeting. It will now come to order. We're convened as of 10:02 a.m. I respectfully ask everyone attending the meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Thank you for joining us this morning. Please note that until further notice, the official meetings of the RTD directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings will, with the unofficial minutes of the meeting, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Visit rtd.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available on RTD's YouTube page. I'll now call the roll. First Vice Chair Catlin. Good luck to Peggy. She's got some things going today. Second Vice Chair Davidson.
Here.
Secretary Sloan.
Here.
Treasurer Deschelle.
Here.
And I am Chair Geisinger. I am here. Other directors in attendance, I see Kate Williams, Director Williams, Director Tisdale. Are there others?
Director Rosenthal.
Director Rosenthal. Great. I also see staff, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Snell, Ms. Knapp Rhodes, Ms. Hunter, Ms. Snyder, and Mr. Davies. I'd like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. I will go through all the instructions if we have anyone wanting to speak. Jillian, is there anybody wanting to speak?
There's no one in the queue and we received no emails.
Okay, then I'm going to skip all the instructions. Were there, oh, you received no emails. Okay, good. Let's see. There's one recommended action on the agenda this afternoon. The first recommended action is 2023 schedule for in-person and remote meetings. For the board of directors to approve the 2023 schedule for in-person and virtual meetings. In adopting the schedule, the board anticipates holding all standing and ad hoc committee meetings virtually and holding monthly board meetings, special board meetings, and study sessions in person at the 1660 Blake Street offices, commencing with the March 28 board meeting, unless otherwise determined by the chair in consultation with the executive committee. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, I hear Director Davidson and Director Deschelle. Is there any discussion on this item?
Yeah, I would just, unless I missed it, if it's permissible to council, just adding a note that says that the in-person meetings will still have a hybrid or virtual option for public participation. Sort of clarifying that we don't need people to come down to Blake Street to participate. If we could add that to the discussion section, that would be great.
Any comments, Melanie?
I think that's appropriate, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we will do that. Are there any no votes on this action? Any other discussion, I guess? All right, with 4 yes votes and 0 no votes and no abstentions, that motion passes. Gosh. My script has gone away. Let's see if I can find the agenda. Pardon me, give me just a second. Here it is. February board meeting agenda review. And I don't have the, hang on one second, let me get into it. Yeah, I guess I'm not on the internet. Sorry, we just came from another meeting. Let me see if I can.
Agenda review, which, Madam Chair, if I may, I move to postpone agenda item 17A to a date certain, the June 2023 Board of Directors meeting, to allow for public engagement on the Code of Conduct and Service Suspension Policy.
Thank you, Director Deschelle. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, I hear Director DeShell is the movement and Director Sloan as the second. Ms. Johnson, I see your camera went on. Did you have as a comment? The motion is to table the code of conduct discussion till June or June. I guess it would go to the ops committee in June and then to the board.
Madam Chair, no, I support that action by the directors. I just came on because I was interested in that item, so thank you very kindly.
Great. Director Rosenthal, you have comments?
I think Director Williams is before me. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Doesn't line up on my computer that way. Sorry, Director Williams, you're next.
Thank you. I would like us to be certain that we refer to this continually as amendments to the existing code of conduct. We are not working on the code of conduct that we have had for a long time. We are working on amendments to the code of conduct. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's a good point. The way recommended action currently reads in the agenda is 2023 Code of Conduct and Service Suspension Policy Revision for the Board of Directors to adopt revisions to the Code of Conduct and Service Suspension Policy. So the motion on the floor is to postpone that discussion until June. All right, thanks, Director Williams. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what are some of the reasons why that folks are proposing this?
I can address that, but Director DeShell, do you want to address it as the movement?
Sure, I'll just discuss it quickly, which is I think there's been a clear, a couple things have occurred. I think one, there's been a clear sort of statement from the community, from some of our key stakeholders that RTD could have had a more stronger public engagement in going through this process. And so there's the postponement till June allows staff to go out into the community to work with community partners to do that. I think the second is one of our key personnel who would be driving this had a severe family impact, tragic family loss and family impact. And in addition, out of respect for them, to allow them to both heal, take the time that they need, and not sort of force them to be present at a meeting in which they don't necessarily, where we're still looking at a more robust public engagement process. It seemed more appropriate to move that to June to allow for that public engagement process to take place. And that is, I'll throw it back to the chair if there's anything I left out.
No, I think that's right. And I came rushing in here, but I want to take a minute to say how terribly sorry we all are for Chief Fitzgerald and the really tragic murder of his son at Temple University in Philadelphia. I've heard from so many board members and staff, and I know it's really, our hearts are broken for the chief and his family. So I agree. Director DeShell stated that all very well. It's out of respect for his family. And also, yeah, I know that Deborah Johnson and Stuart Summers are working on a public engagement process that allows us to hear from all of our sections people that want to come and speak to us. Director Rosenthal, did you have?
Thank you. And, and I appreciate, some of the comments about the public engagement process. And at the same time, I believe RTD, and I know our board members, and I've heard personally from many, many, many in the community, and I know we have as well. So I'm hopeful that all of the public engagement process, which was substantial up to now, that we have heard from many people, including at our previous board meeting, that all that be included in that process as well.
Okay, thank you. Director Tisdale, I see your hand, but I think Ms. Snyder had some comment here.
Yes, please. I would defer to General Counsel.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make clear for the record that the motion to postpone, I think, Madam Chair, you might have said that it would go back to the Operations and Safety Committee, and procedurally, it would either go back to the Executive Committee or to the board, but not back to Operations and Safety in June.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's great. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, for the sake of the record, so that we had it here. Can anyone please advise me, and I believe that Operations Committee Chair Kate Williams is on the line. This same motion was made at the Operations Committee and failed. And I was wondering if anybody recalled what the vote actually was, the number of people voting to continue the matter or postpone to a definite time as opposed to proceeding with it. That's my question. Then I would have a brief comment if I can get an answer to that question.
I can answer it, but Director Williams, you have your hand up.
Go ahead, Chair. It's okay. I was just going to give an answer. If you got it, you go.
The vote was 5-2, but I don't think, I guess I don't think that the members generally oppose this. I haven't spoken with all of them, but I know Secretary Sloan is on in the meeting right now, and so is Director Williams.
And my comment therefore would be, I'm a little troubled by the fact that 4 people will make a decision, whatever the vote of the 4 of you might be, but 4 people will make a decision that was already posed and made by the committee by a number greater than that. But I leave the committee to conduct its own business. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That's a good point. I think what our motion is and should be is a motion that the board postpone this or table it. If we're not making the decision, we're taking we're adding to the agenda a motion to table this until June. Is that correct, Director Deschel?
That is not the language I used, but I am happy to withdraw my motion and restate it as such.
I think that's probably the best way to handle that. Any thoughts, Melanie?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the motion to postpone the board's consideration of this recommended action until its board meeting in June is the appropriate. I think that's the intent of Director Deschel's motion.
Yeah, my motion was to take it off the agenda for tomorrow night and postpone it until June. I'm not opposed to putting it back on, amending my motion so that the recommended action is to postpone it. I think procedurally it's a bit odd, but I'm not opposed to it. But the motion that I made was to strike it until June when it would come back.
So Melanie, Director Tealsdale's concern is that this passed the Operations Committee. As the Executive Committee, should we be making that decision or putting it back to the board to make that decision to postpone?
I think there is authority for the Executive Committee and its authority to set the agenda to postpone. You would have the authority to do that, but it is something to take into consideration what Director Tisdale had indicated.
Yeah. And Len, if I may, I think the other important piece here is that what one committee does is not sacred and rubber stamped by the full board or by the Executive Committee. Right. The whole point when we went to smaller committees was to allow for more robust discussion outside of committee. That when committee decides, it's not automatically pushed through, which was sort of how it worked before. So again, I'm happy to take it off. I'm happy to continue this discussion. I know there's others with their hands up. So.
And I'd like to hear the others. I think the advantage of taking it off is that so many people who may be wanting to come and speak would realize we're doing a public engagement process. Director Rosen, or Director, I don't know who was first. Director Williams, were you first?
I think so. Yeah. It normally shows up in order, but that's all right. Thanks, Director Shell. I'm inclined to have a mind with you that the committee does not make absolute decisions, but it would be so simple to resolve all of this if we would bring it to the board and then somebody make the move to postpone any vote on it. And then we would have all of the directors who were in favor or not in favor a chance to say yes or no. My guess is that everybody's in favor of postponing it, and somebody could make the statement about the chief situation and about the fact that we're going to have public comment. And then all that would be in the open record at the board meeting. So my recommendation to this committee is that you let it come to the board meeting this coming Tuesday, and then we move to postpone any absolute decision on it for some amount of time. Thank you.
Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I'm a little confused by what's being proposed here. There's the blanket statement for June, but I don't know if that's back to executive committee. I don't know if that's to the full board. So that it is really confusing. And so I think Director Williams makes a good point that, you know, allowing the board to discuss this matter. And, you know, if the goal is to do public discussion, then we can have public discussion. Let's have it. Let's have people, let's have more folks call in like they did. It was wonderful hearing their feedback from the last meeting. Let's have that discussion. If board members would like to have amendments to the proposals, they can offer those amendments. We can discuss those. We don't have to take a final vote on the 28th, but I think it would be very helpful to have this public discussion. I think it would be great for the public to have more input. And so I'm pro input. I'm for having more public discussion so we can have that actually at our next meeting on the 28th.
Ms. Johnson, looks like you're on now. Did you have something to add?
Madam Chair, if I'm hearing you correctly, did you recognize me?
Yeah, I saw your light going on, so I thought maybe you had something to say.
No, I was just listening to the discussion.
Okay. You know, the downside, and I want to hear what Director Deschel says, the downside of that is, as we said, part of this is out of respect for the chief. And so, you know, setting up a public engagement process when he is there or is available to be there may make more sense than going through all the public comment at the board meeting. But Director Deschel. You might be frozen, Director Deschel. Do you have your hand up? There
I
you
was, and I didn't hear part of what you said. I think I'm unfrozen, which is, I think, you know, I think we're all pro public input, in which case perhaps the middle of the road solution is to move it from recommended action to discussion item. I do think, though, out of respect for the chief, it may make sense still to pull it until June. People are still welcome to come comment on it, a public comment. I know I've gotten a bunch of emails that appear to be sort of Denver Streets Partnership canned emails. I'm sure you guys have as well. You all have as well. But, you know, I think leaving it as a recommended action doesn't achieve the goal, Director Rosenthal, of what you said, which is really having it be more of a discussion. If we're sort of clear that it's not going to be up for a vote, then it should be moved. But I still think the respect for the chief, and I think we will frankly get a better public engagement process when everyone's at their best. And to force that now may not be the best choice.
Yeah, I agree. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate the discussion. What I will share for you all's consideration, recognizing that there is public comment at every board meeting, it may be advantageous to have public comment, but I would agree with the discussions that it should not be a recommended action. If anything, public comment commences at the beginning of the meeting and people can speak to the matter, but outside of the chief, I'd be remiss not to state that many of our employees in law enforcement across the agency, we are all been in a challenging time these past couple of days because we have all been deeply impacted by what has happened. So I would ask you all to factor in our employee ownership priority and take into consideration the values that we believe and hold to be true as it relates to us bringing our whole selves to work. And right now we're trying to be supportive of our law enforcement colleagues at the agency and others that have been deeply impacted by this tragedy. So thank you very much for your consideration.
And thank you for those comments. I think that those are all things that we all want to consider. Okay, I see a lot of repeat hands. Director Williams very quickly and Rosenthal and Tisdale.
I just want to modify. I was not asking for public comment. I was asking for all 15 directors to be able to be involved in the decision to move this to June. I want to modify. I apparently did not speak clearly. Thank you. And however we put that on the agenda, rather than have this committee bear the burden of making that decision, I think that was my request. I'll shut up. Sorry.
You
Bye.
know, I think that the reason it moved on to the other is if it's on the agenda and has not been decided to table it, then people will feel like they need to come in and comment, and that raises the issue of moving forward without the chief. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you. And so would we be able to have some clarification then? Would this go to the executive committee or the full board then in that case? And I guess I'm still not clear as to what the motion is.
Well, I
So
think it would go to the executive committee to approve the agenda item in June, but Director Deschel, did you have something to add there?
I was just saying, I think I am not currently planning to change the motion. The motion is to move it until a date certain in June. And as part of every agenda setting process, it goes to the executive committee in June and then to the full board, whatever that Tuesday evening in June is. So that would be the motion. Just one more time would be to remove item 17A from the agenda until the June 2023 board meeting.
Great. Director Tisdale.
I'm happy to defer to Director Sloan, who has not spoken on this yet, and then I would come back if that's permissible with you.
Okay, Director Sloan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it is a responsibility of the executive committee, but in addition to our vote today, if we could call the other board members to explain the discussion and the reasoning behind the motion to adjourn, because it is contrary to the Operations and Safety Committee's decision. So I don't think it should be a surprise to any of the board members attending the February meeting. And I'd be happy to make as many calls as necessary. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think we need to communicate with them. That's a good point. We can talk about how to do that. That sounds great. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The point is that the Operations and Safety Committee did forward a recommended action. I think it is unprecedented for the Executive Committee to remove from the agenda an item that has been forwarded by a committee. It becomes a Star Chamber proceeding, and I would object to that. I believe that the argument for postponing to a date certain is exceptionally well taken. The chief's circumstances are unique and tragic. We can address that with the board, and I would have enough respect for my fellow board members that they would understand this. But rather than have a group of 4 take the charge and say, okay, you pass this, but we're not going to let you talk about it, I think is unprecedented, and I think sets a very bad precedent. So let's just simply have it go forward and then make a motion to postpone to a date certain for the reasons given, and let the full board take that action. I think that's the most respectful and under our bylaws, the most appropriate way to proceed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Davidson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Director Tisdale and Director Williams, for the comments on that precedent. I think I'd actually like to ask General Counsel Snyder about this, because understood that is very unprecedented. I would say that the chief situation is also perhaps not unprecedented, but certainly exceptionally and extreme. And I know that, to Ms. Johnson's point about staff needing to be present in their best selves as we have any type of discussion around this, I think the postponement from the agenda is the simplest. It's the most, even if we do address it in the meeting, I think it's beneficial to staff. I think It also allows for the community to understand that, that won't be on the agenda, given that this does have a high level of interest, but fully understand the arguments about precedents and the need to have, the board involved in this. Ms. Snyder, I'm wondering if you can give any comments about how to handle the lack of precedence and whether there is, whether in fact that authority does rest with the executive committee, and if you have recommendations on the way forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I definitely take note of Director Tisdale's reflections on the custom and the practice and the history of the board. I think that, while the bylaws do say that the executive committee is empowered to review and establish the agenda for each regular board meeting. So I do think there's an argument to be made that there is authority for the executive committee to set the agenda, and that could include a proper motion with a second and a majority vote to postpone an item. Whether that is something as a custom we really only have about a year under our belt, so with this new committee structure. And so I do think that's something for the executive committee to consider and to take into account Director Tisdale's comments. So I do agree that there's authority to do so. I think it's just your judgment call about whether that is how the executive committee is going to wield its authority.
Thank you. If I could, I would offer that, certainly speaking personally, I think public comment and discussion in the open is the preference and absolutely what we should do as default. But this is a unique circumstance. And for those of us that, have experienced loss, I think we all understand just how horrific this is. And given that this would be much simpler, and no one feels the pressure to have to even be present for discussion, I think this does not necessarily establish our values of not having any kind of open discussion. I think a simple comment to board directors that we've postponed this, and these are the reasons why, is all that we would need. I guess I'll just put forward my support for the amendment, but I understand if we don't go the other way. And thank you, General Counsel Snyder, for the comments on this.
You're welcome.
All right, Director Williams, one more comment.
Yeah, one more. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I know I should butt out of your meeting, but I am a director here, and we are all entitled to our opinion on this, which is why I keep saying, I think we should take it away from a voting situation, which we can do. We can bring it to the board. If people want to come and comment, the chief is not going to be responding to those comments. We don't respond to those comments. He will then have until June to read them and digest them. We are not putting anything on Chief Fitzgerald by bringing this to the board meeting and immediately having Director Deschel make a well-crafted statement that, based on the variety of circumstances, including the chief and upcoming public meetings, that we are asking to postpone it, and take that right away, end of story. And anybody who wants to come to the board meeting and speak, great. I hope we have 400 people who come and speak at every board meeting, but we're not responding, and the chief is not responding. And so we can send him a statement today saying that he doesn't need to be there, and we appreciate him, and we're going to move this on to allow that to happen. But you guys do what you want to do.
Okay, thanks. No, I think we all appreciate the quandary here and want to recognize the power of the committee, but it is a really exceptional situation. And, the employee ownership, the fact that our employees are so affected by this, in addition to the chief, also weighs in. I think it's time to take the vote. Director Williams, is your hand still up? No, okay. Director Deschel, could you restate the motion?
Yes, as soon as I can figure out how to use my phone.
Okay.
I move to postpone recommended agenda item 17A to the June 2023 meeting of the Board of Directors.
Okay. I think given where we are, I'll take the roll. Director Davidson.
Yes.
Director DeShell,
Yes.
Director Sloan,
Yes,
and I am a yes. So we have 4 yes votes and no votes. I think we all appreciate the comments and thank you all for the comments. It's not the ideal way to handle it, but it tells the world where we are before, people come in, and I think it respects the chief and the staff's situation. So given that, we will remove that item from the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the board meeting agenda review. I guess we're in that. Is there a motion to move the February board agenda to the board meeting on February 28th?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I hear Director Sloan as the movement and Director Davidson as a second. Is there any discussion? All right. Are there any no votes on this action? Okay, with 4 yes votes and 0 no votes and 0 abstentions, that motion passes. Discussion items. So now the discussion item portion of the agenda, and there are several items today. First is the government relations report. Michael Davies, I see you there.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. I have a brief report for you and happy to answer any questions. Starting at the federal level, really the news and what we're watching for is the president's budget is anticipated to be released on March 9th. We'll comb through that and point out to the board any highlights in the president's budget that interact with RTD. And then also just at the federal level, just wanted to note, we had an opportunity to partner with the Northwest mayors and commissioners in their advocacy trip to DC, largely focused on their RAISE grant for Highway 119. And I think it's just a good opportunity for both the board and RTD staff to improve our relationships with our community partners. And this was a great opportunity to do that. Moving on to the state, really the one bill the board has taken action on is House Bill 1101. That bill has passed the House and didn't see any action this week, but was scheduled for Monday, February 27th at 1:30 in the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee. So we'll participate in that committee and keep the board up to date with any amendments or action that the Senate committee takes on House Bill 1101. And then just rounding it out on state items, obviously tracking a number of bills, but no bills are raising to a level of concern at this time, but obviously continuing to follow a number of bills as they get considered in the General Assembly. And then lastly, just touching on the local level, the thing we've been working on is to set up, and you all will recall, as part of the Sub-Regional Service Council process, which are run largely by the jurisdictional staff at the sub-regional service councils. As a part of that process, we are committed to also doing elected official briefings. And we've sent out a save the date for March 8th. I believe all of the board of directors has received that as well. So a link to that meeting will go out next week to everybody invited. We realize that is a very large meeting, is intended to spell out RTD priorities and projects and give a high-level overview of what we are doing. We do not intend that to be the end of the conversation, only the beginning of the conversation. And we are also working to schedule individual council and commission meetings where RTD can go and get into more detail and have that opportunity for further discussion with elected officials. So just want to highlight, we recognize it's a large meeting and it is intended to make sure that everybody knows of the top projects and priorities that we're working on, but also know that many elected officials want to be able to have that back and forth with RTD, and we want to be able to accommodate that process as well. So that is all I have, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Davies? Director Davidson.
I don't have a question. Just thank you, Mr. Davies. I just wanted to highlight, I had the unique opportunity along with Director Geisinger to watch Mr. Davies in action in Washington, and just would thank you and take the opportunity to celebrate what you're doing for the agency and for the good of us, and watching you in action in DC was like watching you at home, and really appreciate all that you've done for RTD. So thank you.
Great, I would second that. Director Deschelle.
Yeah, we have a great opportunity in our largest area, which is Denver. I believe there's other local elections coming up this spring. Is Catalyst or Michael Davies, you or otherwise, are we engaging with candidates as sort of there's no shortage of candidates who have put out, here's what RTD is, and this is why we want to do with transportation. Do we have a plan for sort of local engagement, general education one-pagers for these candidates, or for folks after they're elected to sort of help get them up to speed on RTD?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course.
Director Shell, that's a great question. I can say that we are involved in, as I said, that local outreach piece. Is there a specific engagement plan for addressing individuals who are candidates? I don't think that we have a firm plan on that at this moment. That is to say that if it is the desire of the board to put together those kind of materials, I mean, we certainly are working to try to take all of our issues and be able to put that into essentially kind of one-pagers and things that we can have that elected officials can look at, and but haven't taken on a specific outreach process for non-elected officials at this time as a part of their candidacy for elected office.
Got it. Would be curious on others' thoughts. Obviously, there's I'm going to take a guess that there's over 50 candidates for Denver's various districts. I think there's 17 for mayor alone. So that would be a pretty high bar. But even if it's, email correspondence with hey, feel free to come talk to us when we have that many people, I think that would be beneficial. And I think at a bare minimum, a plan for once folks are elected at the local level of establishing that relationship, building that relationship, explaining RTD. I'm one of 15, so there's lots of or one of 5 on the government relations side. So obviously there's many of us who have other thoughts, but that would be, I think it's a great opportunity to set something up, to set up a structure and to pilot a structure. I don't know if Boulder or others have an April election or a May election, but at the very least, it'd be good to start building that out to really deepen those relationships and help with any misunderstandings from the get-go. And I'm happy to volunteer my time for the jurisdiction that I represent or others to make sure we get this done.
Great. I've been thinking along a lot of the same lines, and I've talked with Michael Davies some and our lobbyists, well, I'll say 2 things. One is that we've invited the state and local public affairs teams, Brandenburg McKenna and Catalyst, to come. I think it would be the external entities portion of the February meeting, but to come and give a brief presentation and answer questions so people can see them. And then we're going to talk about the retreat in a minute, but I think that's a great idea about reaching out, even just like you said, a one-page letter or something to the candidates. And I think, a lot of us work closely with our elected officials in the sense of the mayors and our staff, but the city councils maybe not as much. And one idea I have for the retreat, which we'll talk about here in a minute, is that we would talk about how we set up a plan for really reaching out more broadly with our city councils, our chambers, and each person maybe in advance of the retreat as a draft, or we can talk about how we do it, but each person hopefully would leave with a plan for reaching out, to meeting with their city councils on a regular basis. Or in Denver, I know it's different. We've got a whole crew of you that represent Denver, but to come up with a plan, and we can work with our local government, with Jen Webster and with Jennifer Brandeberry to help build that out. But obviously, it's a big lift. Staff can't go meet with everybody in all of our districts and shouldn't need to. And I think that the directors generally, what I hear is people want to be going out and meeting. So if we each come up with a plan and we work on it together, I think hopefully we can move forward that communication. And what Michael and Stuart Summers can do for us there is to have talking points, and maybe have PowerPoint that's prepared, and updated regularly, and people can edit it for themselves. So it makes it easy for our directors to go out and meet with our electeds. Any thoughts?
I think that sounds great. I think the one component I would add that we maybe don't always talk about, but for local is critical, is the interaction between land use and transit. I know we talk a lot about how part of our transit problem is our land use problem, but if we're not showing up at the land use meetings to talk about ways it can be better and drawing that direct connection for folks, I think we're missing an opportunity. So Director Geisinger, I absolutely agree that it should be on the directors, and I think the appropriate sort of split would be the assistance from staff on the materials and talking points and PowerPoints, and we can then go and do that.
Great. And staff may want to attend some of them, if it's Denver City Council or some of the others. But it's a lot of us have a lot of smaller and diverse jurisdictions that we can address. So great. Any other thoughts on this topic? Thanks, Michael. I appreciate the good report. Next discussion item is the board retreat. It's scheduled for March 25th. The board office has secured the Colorado History Museum as a venue. An RFQ has gone out for Board of Directors receipt facilitation. It was published last week and sent directly to the 6 contacts that were included with the PR, as well as the list of 50 SBEs and DBEs provided by the Small Business Office. RFQ proposals are due no later than March 3rd. I think there's a period during which people can ask questions. And then we'll have a plan for choosing, the facilitator. Are there other ideas? I guess one other piece I have that is not necessarily a retreat topic, but I know that Ms. Charlene Pelleggi is planning to come to the board soon to talk about workforce. And I'd like us to, really get into what workforce development programs we're working with, because we all represent our separate districts, and there are a lot of different workforce development programs. I think we're going to be talking with the state about theirs, but this is another area that I think the directors could take away some information and potentially find other places to help us develop our workforce. I don't know if that's a retreat topic. We've had other people talk about, policies. I'm thinking that maybe the best thing to do, we have a strategic plan, but we are looking, at a performance committee at, how we use the strategic plan, maybe to do a better performance review next year or a different one. And, I guess I'm thinking of sending out an email to people with some ideas for the retreat and getting feedback on what people would like to discuss. Any other suggestions, ideas? Director Davidson.
I think the one thing, I love that, Chair, you had brought up, let's get specific and into the details and not stay too high level. So I think one thing that would be exciting would be if we talk about those strategic priorities, customer excellence, community value, financial sustainability, and employee ownership. If there are ways that the board can contribute to and advance those strategic priorities, we may be able to come up with some joint actions that we can all take to advance the agency's goals. So a perfect example is if we can or for example, the government outreach that will all have specific actions of who we're going to engage with and what our engagement plans are as directors in our individual jurisdictions.
Yep.
Perhaps we can put forward some measurable goals that just the same way we'll talk in performance committee about measuring the performance of the agency, we could measure our performance and advancement of, for example, I think community value is a clear one that could be tied to. And whether we identify something that's measurable as a result, or whether it's measurable in terms of an action of how many engagements or so forth, I think it would actually be fun and also give us some accountability as directors if we left the retreat with actions that are tied to strategic priorities. And if we take the opportunity to also dialogue with Ms. Johnson about what might help her and her staff. So I don't think I'm saying anything different other than just the discussion around those strategic priorities and any discussions of the things we're going to do, like an outreach plan. It'd be fun to come up with some measurables and tie them to those strategic outcomes.
Great. Other comments? Okay.
I'll throw another one out.
Yeah,
Just that
great. Go ahead.
I would love if we're able to find some time to, and I know we're crowding the agenda, there's a lot, but that could also relate to our performance committee goals. For those that aren't aware, the performance committee is going to meet following the retreat in April. And we're going to meet 3 different times before we establish our regular cadence. And one of the things we're trying to do is determine what the best ways are to measure the agency. If there's a little bit of time to solicit feedback and ideas, I think this would be a good chance to have the whole board put forward those ideas that the performance committee can then take in April and make some decisions on. So I guess I'll just put that out there as if we have time to do that, might be beneficial.
Good. I believe Director Guzman next, and then Director Sloan.
Wanted to say here for the actionable items. I'm all about that. Sorry, bubble in my throat. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Director
Director.
Sloan.
Yes, I am just checking in on the process for the retreat and whether we have a facilitator engaged yet, and if the scope of work for the facilitator included, as it did last year, a one-on-one talk between the facilitator and each board member about their ideas and expectations of the retreat.
Yeah, you may have stepped away. The RFQ went out last week. It's gone out to the people that went to last year, and 50 SBs and DBs. The proposals are due no later than March 3rd. It does include, it's basically very similar to last year. It does include the one-on-one conversations. And so I guess my sort of overall thought is to get an email out to people with some of these ideas and requesting their ideas and sort of a way of directing the facilitator. My thoughts, and it sounds like, that Director Davidson and Director Guzman at least, is the more we can come away with action plans from this retreat, the better it'll be. So, yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Are there any other matters anyone wants to discuss? Okey-doke, I don't see one. Not seeing any other matters, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. We are now adjourned as of 10:51 on this Thursday, February 23rd. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.